Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our live monthly Q&A. It's so wonderful to have you here who are live and everyone who's joining the recording. Just by taking your time to invest in your parenting, you're making a huge difference in your lives, in your children's lives, and in the world. So thank you. And thank you so much for sending me your questions, because your questions help. First of all, are always really awesome, and they make me think. And um, somebody will always have the same question that you're asking. So know that you're not just asking it for yourself, you're asking it for this entire community. And it also helps me to know what content you're looking for, so I can expand upon the answers that I give in this class to the questions in our weekly classes. So that being said, we have a few questions we're going to get to today. And again, thank you just so much for sending them, and please keep them coming. So the first question is from a mom, and she asked, I have been wondering about getting my kids to start helping out in the house with very simple chores. I'm not a huge fan of reward charts, but I also don't have any other ideas about how to convince them the value of doing something around the house for betterment of the environment for all of us. This is such a wonderful question and such an important one. And I know that it's one that's on a lot of parents' minds. I actually did like a whole thing on Instagram about it, so I recommend you check that out too. But um, okay, here's what I think about chores. So, first of all, don't call them chores, right? Because chores is a daunting word. Chores is something that nobody wants to do. Chores, it feels like mundane. It feels like it's something that we're being forced into. So the first thing is, don't call them chores, but also don't have in your intention as a parent that you're asking your children to do chores or you're forcing them into doing something. Because remember, our intention as parents, the intention we set around anything that we do with our children, is setting ourselves and our children up for the reality that we will create. So if we decide that our children, and that's really key, right? When the mom said that she wants to help her children understand the value of doing something around the house for the betterment of the environment for all of us. That's a beautiful intention to have, to create a betterment of environment, right? To For your children to understand the value of contributing to that environment in your home. That's a beautiful intention. The intention of chores is already daunting for us as parents, because we're thinking like, there's no way that my children are going to go for that, right? And also because you don't, and part of the question was, how do I convince them? If we start out with thinking that we're going to have to convince our child to do something, chances are they're not going to do it, because we're going to come off with this vibe of, I'm trying to convince you, desperation, right? Like, I'm trying to force you into something. So we want to already take out this idea like we're going to have to convince our children. Our intention is, we are coming together as a family to create a better environment, to all of us to learn how to contribute to this environment all together. So that's a really, really important point. She asked about using she said that she's not a fan of reward charts. I'm not either. I'm really not a fan of reward charts, especially, well, with anything, but definitely with something that you're trying to create as part of, a regular routine. Um, I have classes on rewards, punishments, bribes, and threats. In my opinion, they all come down to the same essence of, we're trying to manipulate our children into doing something. And that's not the point. We want to stick to, with chores, I think the most important thing is to stick to the value. Now, what family value can you relate to this idea of chores? It's a great idea for all of us to have clear family values, because then when we go to create boundaries with our children, when we go to implement something like how we can all help more around the house, we want to tie it into a family value that children understand and are familiar with, right? If your family value is respect, then your children are going to hear that word all the time. You're going to be respectful to your children because it's part of your family values. And now your children are being asked to be respectful in the way of keeping the house neat and clean and tidy. So that's the approach, the intention. If we want to approach our, again, not using the word chores, but start to have our children help around the home, think about what family value you can center this around. right? If your family value is cooperation, if your family value is cleanliness, okay? What family value can you center this around so your children understand the importance of helping out around the house? They don't take it as this is something I have to do. This is something I'm being forced into doing because no one likes to do this. Now, it's really important to note, and this is what I understood through my Instagram audience, okay, that many people, many grown-ups today, everyone's kind of divided into two categories, okay, based on what they remember about chores as children. The first category are parents who were forced to help out around the house and they felt like cleaning ladies, and so have a lot of resentment towards towards that. Okay, their memories of being forced to help around the house. And then there's the other category of parents who, as children, were not allowed to help out because they didn't do it right, or just weren't taught and given the opportunity to do so. And then they grew up feeling like they have no idea how to take care of a home, or just like they wanted to help and their parents didn't let them. And so, it kind of created resentment in the opposite way, where like, why don't you want me to help? What's wrong with me, right? Like, why can't I be a part? So it's interesting to understand this, because we don't want to create either of those realities. I do believe very much that it's important for all children to contribute and to be a part, right? But then there's also the idea of like, are we asking them to clean up the whole house? Are we asking them to be responsible for their own things, for their own room, for clearing their own plate, for helping to create dinner, which is something we all sit down and do together? What part of dinner can they be a part of, right? So with that, it helps children to understand, wow, okay, I'm a part of this family, so I'm going to be a part of creating this atmosphere of dinner, a part of taking care of my room, a part of X, Y, and Z, right? Cleaning up after myself, because this is in the family room is a communal room. And so I need to be in charge of my own things. I don't really believe in personally in having children clean up after us, the adults. I don't really believe in them cleaning up after their siblings. I think that's a way to really easy way to create a lot of resentment. But you know if it's focused around a family value, and B, around, like there's an explanation, there's a purpose, and it's very, very clear and understood, I think just already having that intention will help a lot. Don't go into it with being worried that your children are not going to react well to it. Don't go into it, right, expecting the worst. Go into it with excitement, explain it. We could even ask them, like, what would you like to do? How do you think you could contribute around the house? How do you think you could contribute to creating a respectful environment, or a clean environment, or a cooperative environment, right? And let it come from them. I hope that answers your question. If not, please send me a follow-up. I'd be happy to go into it more. And I would also love to hear how it goes. So let me know. Please let me know how it goes. The second question we got, which is really great. What do I do at the playground when I'm watching another child annoy mine and the other one just won't stop? Okay, so this is a great question. I'm sure a lot of us struggle with that. As parents, there's always this fine line that we straddle between, jumping in and helping, and also allowing our children the space to figure it out on their own. So the first question I would ask is your child asking you for help or not? If your child's not asking you for help, stay back. It's not necessary to help. Why? Because your child is trying to figure it out on their own. And it's good to allow them the space to do that, right? We don't need to jump in as adults. Children, even the child that's really being annoying to your child is not a bad kid. They're trying to get your child's attention. They're trying to fulfill some need that is missing for them. So no, it's not your child's job to fill that need, but just understanding and recognizing that is important, right? Because it takes out the maliciousness of the other side that many of us feel and get triggered by. So let your child be. Now, if your child A is actually too young to speak up for themselves, I would say yes, get involved. Or B, your child comes to you and asks you for help. Yes, then you get involved. How do you get involved without being too dominant? You could first let your child know, you know what, I really believe in you. I know you can do this on your own. If your child's like, no, I can't, or you've seen your child try and say stop over and over again, the other kid's not responding, what can you do? So the first thing I would say is that, and this goes for any time we're getting involved in, like in any sort of back and forth between two children, is we come in question mode. So we want to create a space where our child learns how to speak up for themselves, learns the words to use, the way to communicate, and we are just kind of leading them with questions. So we're giving them the space to fill in the blanks on their own. For example, you can come in between the two children and let's say your son's name is John, okay? Just like a generic name, no one in mind. John, I hear that you really don't like when Sam is throwing sand at you. Is that right? Yes. Okay. And can you tell Sam how that makes you feel? And give your child the space to talk as much as possible. Okay. You can then ask Sam, first of all, if Sam's parent is around, it's a great, you don't have to involve them, but you may want to. You have to feel it out. Would Sam's parent want to be there? Maybe Sam's parent is watching and so jumps into the conversation. So you can just gently ask, Sam, do you hear what John is saying? Right? What do you think about that? Do you think it sounds like John really do you think you can stop throwing sand, or do you think, what do you think about that? And so you create this dialogue because we want to create a space for our children to learn to speak up for themselves. Remember, the playground example and how that's handled is going to set the tone for how your child will handle other situations when they're adult and they're being annoyed or picked on, or someone is not speaking kindly to them. So you really want to create a space where you're allowing them to learn how to create that language. Now, if your child's really small, you can absolutely use your body as a barrier if you need to, right? I'm not talking about a situation where children are being violent or really mean, but like a normal interaction at the playground. You really just want to get your child talking and explaining and learning how to say in a very clear voice, acknowledge what they're feeling, state what they're feeling, acknowledge what happened, state what they're feeling, and let the other side know what the needs are, right? I need you to stop throwing sand at me. I need space. I need cooperation, whatever it might be. I need respect. And if that doesn't work, then it's also okay for your child not to play with that child, right? And we shouldn't be shy around that. There's nothing wrong with telling your child, if this isn't working for you, you can stand up and walk away and play with someone else and let them know, like, if you can't play by my rules, I'm not going to play with you. And that's okay too, right? That's a child's way of creating a boundary in a very respectful way. Hope that helps. Let me know if there are follow-up questions. The third question, how do I handle a play date disagreement? Okay, so the reason why this is a very similar question, but I brought it in because I think it's important, because it's different than when you're on the playground where like a child can go off and like stop playing with the child if they need to. And on a play date, if it's at your home, it's in your child's turf, which is a much more sensitive place sometimes. And B, you cannot just kick the other child out or say like, okay, stop playing with each other. So what do you do? How do you handle it? So the first thing is that many times we don't need to get involved. Again, adult intervention it's better not to. Sometimes we have to, but it's better not to, because many times children will learn how to solve problems on their own, okay? Which is wonderful when they can, and usually they can. Now, what I would do is, if there is a play date happening and the children are arguing and they come to you for help, or you hear it, right? It's really loud and you really feel like you need to get involved. You go between the children. So you're not taking your child's side, even though it's your child and you love them, but you're also not taking the other child's side, because A, that will make your child feel really bad, and B, you just really want to stay neutral, right? So your energy, where you put your body really defines where your energy is. And so you want to place your body between the two children in a very equal way, so that everybody's getting enough of your energy and nobody feels like you're taking a side. Okay. Now, it's important as a parent to not put it on your child and make them feel bad, like they have to be the host, they have to share, right? It's your turf. Being nice to them, because we don't want them to feel bad. They feel ownership over their space, and they should. It is their space. Their home is their safe space, right? For some of us, it's easier to take our child's side and kind of be annoyed at the other kid. So we obviously want to be careful about balancing that. But again, in that case, it's really all about, how do we create conversation? How do we create dialogue? How do we neutrally ask each child how they feel and help them, reach not a compromise, but reach a place where each one feels heard? Oftentimes when children feel heard, it's enough. They kind of like figure out how to get over it on their own, because they just want to express themselves. They just want to feel heard. They just want, especially the adult in the area, to know what's happening and what went on, and to be aware that this one was hurting my feelings. This one wouldn't share with me. I would recommend not forcing your child to share. I would recommend taking the other child and asking them to explore and find something else that they can play with, right? If the play date's really just not working well, then there's no harm in not making a play date with between those two children for now. They might need a break from each other, and that's really okay. I think play dates are a great space for children to learn how to navigate challenges. Uh, and again, the key to that is learning how to acknowledge what's happening, what they're feeling, and why they're feeling it, and move forward through that. The fourth and last question that we're going to answer today is, my child is complaining about their teacher being mean. What do I do? So this is a really, really important question. And it has a few components to it. So the first thing is, I would do some digging and really explore with your child, what does it mean that my teacher is being mean? Because some children are very sensitive. And so automatically will say my teacher's being mean, where maybe the teacher is just a little bit more stern or is not doing what your child wants them to do. And so in your child's mind, they're being mean. For example, my daughter loves to participate and ask questions. And if her hand doesn't get raised, it means her teacher doesn't like her and her teacher's mean. I'm sorry, if she raises her hand and she's not called on, that's what she interprets it. So I know that that's something that's really important to her. I love that she loves to participate. I also understand that teachers can't always call on her because there are so many other children in the room. So you want to understand, what does that mean to your child? Now, I would never tell my daughter, that's not, your teacher is not being mean, because that would be negating her feelings. We don't want to negate any feelings, right? We want to create a space where she feels heard. Oh yeah, that's really hard. You have so much to say and your teacher isn't calling on you, right? I totally understand why you would feel that that's really mean, because you really want your teacher to call on you, right? So even if the teacher's not being mean, you want to acknowledge and accept and give room for your child to have their feelings. At the same time, though, right, how can we find a solution to your child not to, for example, my child not being upset every day when her hand isn't called on, to talk about, and you can ask questions like, I wonder, like, how many kids are in the class? And your child's going to say 15. That's a lot of kids. I wonder, when you raise your hand, are there other kids raising their hands? Yes. Oh, so does the teacher call on all the kids except for you? No. Right? And then that can lead into a conversation about not why the teacher's not mean, but just about what's happening and how to help your child feel at peace and okay within the situation. Okay, that's number one. Number two is to also, yes, what I wanted to say was, sorry, just getting my thoughts in order. The other thing is that, some teachers talked in a more stern voice, right? And teachers have different personalities. And sometimes our children are used to adults speaking in one way and they speak in another way, and it's like totally throws them off. And I think it's really important to help our children to note that and to learn that and to understand that our teachers are also going through so many things, right? So if they lose it one day, it doesn't necessarily make them mean. It depends obviously on the scale of how they lose it. But if a teacher gets a little bit impatient one day, what else is going on in the classroom? A teacher is also a human being, right? Like, let's have some empathy for what they're going through. I'm not talking about, of course, if a teacher is really picking on your child, and we'll go into that after. I'm talking about like in a normal situation, like a normal kind of mean thing, like what I shared with you with my daughter. The other thing I really think is important is that we want to create a space where our children learn how to advocate for themselves. So I would ask my daughter to go back to the teacher and let her know that when the teacher doesn't call on her, it hurts her feelings, or whatever it is that she feels about it. Now, this is important, not because it's necessarily going to change what the teacher does, but I think it's important for my child to hear from the teacher that, there are so many kids in the class and I can't always call on you. It doesn't mean I don't want to hear what you have to say. It just means that there's so much going on and I can't always call on you. That will help my daughter, my child, to know that, oh, right, it's not about her. It's just about the fact that it's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of a classroom. And I think it's important also for our children to learn how to approach other adults without fear, to be okay with sharing what they feel in a respectful way. There's nothing wrong with a student approaching a teacher, and saying what they feel and saying how they feel in the classroom. I think it's actually important. It's an amazing skill. I think a lot of teachers will appreciate it. And I wish I had been able to do that as a student in a classroom to my teachers. So I think it's important for our children to learn to stand up for themselves, no matter who it is to, as long as it's with respect. Now, let's just say that the teacher's actually being mean, okay? And none of this is going to work because the teacher's clearly picking on your child. That's when you pick up the phone and you talk to the teacher. Now, it never works to talk to a teacher and put them on the defense, right? Like, you're doing this and this and that to my child. It won't work with anyone. So I would come from a question mode, calling the teacher and asking, you know, my son John came home and he said that these words were used in the classroom. I'm just wondering, like, I'd like to know more about, can you tell me more about this? I'd like to know more about this situation, right? And I'd like to know more about how this was actually handled. I know that he felt this way, X, Y, and Z about it. I'd really like to know what happened. Come in question mode. Can you give me more information? I'm not sure, I'm not sure that that's the best way to handle it with my son. Can I give you some advice about my child? You're not giving the teacher advice on them as a teacher, but you're talking about your child. And if a teacher doesn't respond well to that, which they really should, then that's the time to maybe let them know that, you know what, this conversation doesn't seem to be going anywhere. I'm going to have to, I think I'd be more comfortable if you have a conversation with the principal as well, or whoever their supervisor is. Like, on one hand, we want to teach our children to speak up for themselves, and that's really important, and advocate for themselves, and have empathy for everyone in their lives. But on the other hand, when there's an adult in a place of power, it can mean a lot and be really important to a child that we get up and we stand up and we let our child know that I'm here, I'm taking care of you, you're safe. And I'm not, we don't allow another adult to just walk all over you, no matter who it is and what's happening. So sometimes it does involve that, but we just want to remember to never get into a place of blame and victim. We want to create a space where our child is learning and growing and understanding that they have the power in their lives to use their mouth, to speak up, and to not let other people, speak to them in any other way. So I hope that's helpful. I actually have another question. I'm going to save it for next week. It's about sibling rivalry, because I want to, time is up for us for this session. Thank you so much for your questions. Again, they really were truly amazing. They sparked a lot of thoughts for maybe weekly classes to expand upon these topics more. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for taking the time. And I look forward to talking with you soon again. Have a great day.